Traders, how are you? Marcello here, founder of the Day Trading Academy. We're here in Cyprus. Today we're doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week. A few things I wanted to ask you guys. First, obviously, don't hesitate to leave all the questions with hashtag AskMarcello. I'll be happy to go ahead and pull all the questions for you guys. Don't forget to subscribe, whether it's on YouTube or even Instagram. I'm a Wandering Trader on Instagram. We're here actually in Cyprus doing 2 interviews with 2 traders on our Latin American side. They're from Colombia and Spain, Venezuela as well, about their process, and they've been doing really, really well. So I wanted to ask you guys if you would want to see the video of the interviews with them in Spanish, but with English subtitles. So let me know if you guys would want to see that, and I'll be happy to go ahead and upload it. Other than that, don't forget, the podcast is available, iTunes, Spotify, absolutely everything, so we can definitely go ahead and keep uploading that for you as well. So I appreciate all the feedback on the podcast. I really appreciate it. Overall this week, there was one overarching piece of news that really affected everything, and more than anything, it was the trade war basically with China and the United States. The Trump obviously raised the tariffs up to 25%. I'm sure you guys heard it in the news, and that really caused some chaos because then China retaliated, and that what is most of all affected the markets international this week. On Monday, the markets plunged due to that news. The Dow and S&P had their worst day since January 3rd. The Nasdaq had its worst day since 2009, and it had its biggest one-day drop since December 4th, 2008. U.S. stocks ended higher on Tuesday and Wednesday. Reports that Trump was going to hold off imposing tariffs on imported cars and also parts that eased growth concerns as well, and there was some economic data that disappointed investors. On Thursday and Friday, the U.S. stocks were higher. Dow had the down 4th week in a row, longest losing streak in 3 years. And for the week, the Dow was down 0.69%. The S&P 500 was down 0.73%, and the Nasdaq was down 1.29%. Overseas market news, more of the same. We had a lot, obviously this is worldwide trade news, the trade war between the US and China, so that affected international markets as well. The European markets overall are mostly actually higher. Istanbul was down 2%, which is the biggest loser. Russia, if you consider that Europe was the biggest winner at 2.71%. Latin American markets were mostly lower, especially since the dollar actually rose quite a bit this week, which put some pressure on crude and other commodities. So I'll explain that in just a second. So the Latin American markets, the biggest loser was the Bovespa in Brazil at 4.74%. And there was really only one positive. The biggest winner was the Mexican exchange at 0.15%. The African and Middle Eastern markets, Saudi Arabia down 2.73%. The Asian markets also mostly lower. Indonesia at negative 6.656%. And the India Sensex, the only positive one, at 1.25. Bitcoin, very good news in Bitcoin. If you guys have been seeing the rise over the last week, Bitcoin has not seen $6,000 in almost 6 months, and it crossed that level almost a week ago. It moved to above 7,000 for the first time since September of 2018, and other cryptocurrencies as well, like Ripple, Ether, Bitcoin Cash, and Litecoin rallied as well. One of the main reasons for this happening last week is because Microsoft now is doing a decentralized project called Ion on the blockchain. So guys, you guys know my stance on Bitcoin, right? Remember that there's 2 pieces of this market, let's call it. You have Bitcoin, or digital currencies, right? Or cryptocurrencies, whatever you want to call them. And then you have blockchain, which the actual currencies use. So you have that situation where you have these 2, and a lot of people, when they talk about them, they talk about them together. But the reality is there's 2 separate things. And notice how Microsoft is using blockchain. They're not using cryptocurrency, right? So in my view, blockchain is going to revolutionize the world. It's going to change everything. It's going to cut out all the middlemen. Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, not so much, especially the ones that we have now. There's already been a lot that have actually failed. Another thing as well was Baht. There's another Bitcoin future from Baht that's actually going to launch in July, and that allowed for the week for Bitcoin to surge past $8,000, its highest mark since last July. Other than that, Bitcoin does face new challenges to its market dominance. There's 2,000 other small digital coins. Bitcoin actually owns about 60% of the market value. The crypto market is $240 billion. And when it first started, it had about 90%. Other than that, we saw a bit of a flash crash on Friday where we had a lot of the crypto markets kind of come down and then recover. So it had ended a little bit more negative on Friday. And overall for the week, Bitcoin went up 15.10%. at 7,304.99. Overall for the week, commodities, the supply, there's been a lot of fears in terms of supply. The prices are 33% higher, more than anything due to the fact that the United States has been putting a lot of pressure on Iran and also Venezuela with the sanctions. The US production has actually been covering the glut that has been caused from those two countries, essentially slashing their production due to the US. There was two Saudi Arabian oil tankers that were attacked and damaged in the Persian Gulf. I don't know if you guys remember, but I talked to you guys about how I thought this was going to happen for terrorism. Nobody's taken claim to it yet. But remember, I did talk about the fact, I'll try to find the video and put it in here, because I believe it was last year in December or November. But I believe that I told you guys that this was going to happen so they could raise the price of oil, because now with the US being a major producer, Russia increasing production, there's the influence that OPEC has now isn't the same anymore. And obviously all these countries need their cash. The more that oil goes down, the tighter position they're put in, and a lot of the OPEC countries are actually undermining their own influence because they're not following the laws that they're actually setting for each other, right? So other than that, there were some drones that attacked pumping stations in Saudi Arabia, and also the UAE, which is the United Arab Emirates, where Dubai is. If you guys, I'm sure you heard of Dubai. There were 4 commercial ships attacked in its territorial waters. That obviously put a lot of pressure on oil prices. US crude went up 1.77%. Brent went up 2.11%. Don't mind my hair, by the way. We're here. I've been coming in and out of the pool. If you guys have always wondered why the DTA logo is a lion, now you guys know. Other than that, a strengthening dollar this week put a lot of pressure on precious metals. The spot gold notches lower, with silver hitting a 5-month low. Palladium, if you guys remember, which skyrocketed above the value of gold, went down 19% from the record peak in March, and platinum is now set to mark its worst week in 10 weeks. The gold is down 0.64 for the week. Silver is down 2.49%. If you guys, I did upload a video on YouTube for all of you guys listening on the podcast, or even watching this on Instagram. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram. I talked about how I'm trading right now. So if you guys go and look at that video, you'll see I drew a little bit of a circle in a video that I did on the Spanish side. And it's literally silver dropped right down to the center of that circle. And now is when I'm looking for opportunities. And in my opinion, it's the time to buy. So don't just buy because I'm saying it. Remember, I'm not a trading advisor. I can't recommend you guys do anything. This is only for educational purposes. So if you guys are interested in that, go do your research, because I want to make sure that you guys do the right thing for you. Financial news, there's a gentleman named Jeffrey Gundlach, which is the CEO of Double Line Capital, a hedge fund. He's saying that the U.S. growth appears to be based exclusively on the government, more than anything corporate and mortgage debt that have been created in the economy. And if it wasn't for that, he's saying this debt from corporate and also the mortgage debt, that the economy actually would have contracted if the U.S. didn't add trillions of dollars in debt. China is a leading foreign creditor to the U.S. There's a lot of fear that China is now going to use the bonds and the treasuries as an actual trade war. They're going to weaponize them to fight against the trade war. They're just ahead of Japan in second place in terms of a debtor nation to the U.S. In other words, China is the country that gives the most money to borrow money to the U.S. Japan is second. And China is equal to the combined treasury holdings of Brazil, the UK, Ireland, and Switzerland. So it's quite a bit. The Chinese government sold the most treasuries in near 2.5 years in March, $20.45 billion. Its total holdings are down to $1.2 trillion. Big news in Forex this week. One thing that I always tell you guys to be careful with. 5 global banks hit with a $1.2 billion fine in Europe for running cartels and coordinating currency trading. This is one of the reasons why I always tell you guys that be very careful trading things like Forex or CFDs and binary options that are now illegal in Europe according to ESMA, because there's a lot of manipulation. Not to say you can't make money in Forex, because obviously you can, but it's a lot more difficult for a beginner trader. The EU says that JP Morgan Chase, Citigroup, Barclays, RBS, and also Japan's MUFG are going to pay the penalties following the investigation of collusion in the foreign exchange market. The EU now is also looking for ways to widen the use of the euro to counter the US dollar's global dominance. The top EU officials are saying as a bloc they're trying to salvage the Iran nuclear deal, and that's going to help for to bypass the US sanctions. If you guys don't know, the financial system essentially is run by the United States more than anything because of the SWIFT system. The SWIFT system is what allows everybody to do international wires. So if you're going to send a wire from the US to Canada, or Canada to China, or China to Europe, or Europe to South Africa, anywhere in the world, you have to go through the SWIFT system in the US. That's why the US can place sanctions and control the things that they do. Now, this is probably going to change over time because Russia's already looking for a way to actually bypass its system as well. But in the meantime, the US still controls the world more than anything. Part of the reason, obviously the military as well, but because of this SWIFT system and the financial system that they can control in the world. International Capital Markets Association is doing an annual conference. Basically, it's a lot of bond makers and investors. They're warning that the heavy reliance on debt financing and the slow economic growth can lead to a creation of debt bubbles, and it risks destabilizing the entire financial system. And essentially what's going to happen is, I've talked about this recession for a long time. Now a lot of people are actually discussing it. I've been talking about it here on the channel for the last 4 or 5 years. We're going to walk into a financial crisis, which is going to be worse than 2008, okay? Then all the governments are going to go and take out all the debt they can to try to incentivize the system, to help the system out like they did in 2008 since it worked last time. And then we're going to walk into a debt crisis, just so you guys know what the progression of events is going to be. In economy, Brazil's government and central bank are talking about how the country's fiscal and economic health are actually deteriorating rapidly. There's been another set of economic news that actually indicates that the Brazilian economy is walking into a recession. Chinese economy saw industrial output at a 16-year low in retail sales as well. The growth in manufacturing investment came in at the slowest pace going back to 2004 as the private market eased off investment, which basically means that there's going to be more stimulus on the way in China. If you guys don't remember, remember what I always try to do with these videos, right? And these podcasts that I do for you guys about the market events. I'm never going to get political. First, I always like to remind you guys of that. So it doesn't matter if you're left or right, you love Obama, hate Obama, love Trump, hate Trump, doesn't matter. What I want you guys to really understand is how you connect all the dots. Never listen to what people say, always see what they do. And if you guys remember, I don't know if you guys actually, remember the things that I say in these videos, the Chinese government said that they, quote, weren't going to continue helping the market. They weren't going to do more stimulus. And now everybody forgot about that, and they're literally giving more stimulus on the way. Now, they haven't announced that yet, but I'm letting you guys know that that's what's going to happen, okay? Other than that, in the German economy, return to growth in Q1 to a incredible 0.04% growth in Q1. So they escaped the recession. If you guys remember, what's classified as a recession or a contraction in the economy is 2 negative quarters. Household spenders spent more freely and construction activity picked up, but the government cautioned about the outlook remained by the trade disputes. In corporate news, Germany's Bayer, which is the pharmaceutical company that bought Monsanto, their shareholders are in a bit of an uproar because now Bayer lost another $2 billion lawsuit that their product Roundup, which is the pesticide, actually causes cancer. They're facing lawsuits from up to 13,400 plaintiffs, and the shares are down over 45% from last year. The Facebook of China, Tencent, reported on Wednesday a 17% rise in profit in Q1, beating estimates. Their profit attributable to equity holders of the company was $3.93 billion, and their revenue grew 83% to 85.5 billion won. Baidu, which is the Google of China, posted its first loss in 15 years as China's slowdown hits the advertising sector. So basically, the economy isn't doing as well. Companies are spending less money on advertising, and obviously the majority of their money is advertising. Boeing stocks recovered after they stated that they completed development of a software update for the 737 MAX jets. Remember that they actually reported that last month in April they didn't receive any orders for jets. In trade news, President Trump said he's going to lift the tariffs from steel and aluminum that are coming from Canada and Mexico. He's going to boost efforts to encourage lawmakers to ratify the new NAFTA deal. Remember, that's the free trade agreement from North America, Mexico, Canada, the United States, which is now called the USMCA Trade Pact. In technology, Germany is opening its first ever section of e-highway. I always talk louder because we got a different mic, just so you guys know. Germany opened up its first ever e-highway. This for me was really interesting. So if you guys have ever been to Europe or seen pictures of the trains in Europe, a lot of them are electric, right? Japan, they have the maglevs. But a lot of trains, especially back in the day, they work off electric. So they have the train tracks, and then the trains have two little sticks that pop up and are connected to the electric wires that power the train. So now what they're doing in Germany, on the very right lane, if you guys want to go and see the video, they have posts that are like this, right? Posts on top of the right side of the highway with the electric wires. And so what trucks are going to be able to do, instead of stopping and charging, they're going to be able to stay on the road. They do the sticks up, right? They go from the top of the truck, they connect to the wires, and it literally automatically charges the battery while it charges the truck. It's brilliant. Leave it to those Germans to think of the most efficient way to do things. It's going to allow cargo trucks to change their batteries while they're on the move. Overhead cables of electric, as I mentioned. And the Ministry of Transportation in Germany actually says that up to 80% of Germany's truck traffic may soon be electrified. If you guys don't know, in the world, the vast majority of freight inside of continental borders, not shipping, but once the ship gets there, it's mostly by truck. So this is obviously going to be amazing, but it's going to save the environment. Obviously, the destruction that happens to be able to create the batteries in the cars, that obviously doesn't destroy the environment. Latest, Elon Musk plans to launch an entire industry of internet. He's going to launch 60 satellites out of 12,000 this week to create a broadband network with satellites in the sky. They're going to be part of a constellation designed to beam the internet through the entire globe. Volvo Cars has signed a multi-billion-dollar deal with Asian battery firms. It's firmly committed to moving towards beyond internal combustion engines. U.S. lawmakers have also been saying that they're developing a national electric vehicle supply chain policy. And there's a company that says that in Germany, that Lilium, it's a startup that has a 5-seater electric air taxi prototype called the Lilium Jet. They're saying that it's going to be the first app-based flying taxi service, and it's going to be fully operational globally by 2025. In investment news, Euronext won approval from Norway's finance ministry to buy the 100% of the Oslo Stock Exchange. They were in competition with NASDAQ to be able to go ahead and buy the exchange. That's going to be the last hurdle that they need to go ahead and do the takeover battle with the US NASDAQ. The General Counsel of US Labor Agency concluded that drivers from Uber and Lyft are actually independent contractors and not employees, which is a huge piece of news, because if they were considered employees, it would be a huge cost for Uber and Lyft. Warren Buffett disclosed the amount of shares that he has in Amazon, which is about 483,300 shares, worth $904 million. It's less than 1% of all the Amazon shares outstanding, and a very small percentage of all the shares that he actually has in Berkshire Hathaway. International events, we had an escalation with Iran this week as Trump warned Iran on Monday that they're going to suffer greatly if they target any U.S. interests in the world. They deployed an aircraft carrier in the Middle East, and that is literally the Gulf where Iran is, and more jet fighters as well with the rising tensions with the government. The Iran Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, hopefully I said it right. If we got any watchers from Iran, let me know if I said it right. They said that they don't seek a war with the US, but they will protect their interests. And in the unusual facts this week, there was a Porsche, one-of-a-kind Porsche, that sold for $20 million in an auction. It was actually the first Porsche that's ever been created. It actually was produced 10 years before Porsche actually existed. And they sold it in Vienna for a race in 1939. That's actually pretty interesting. I liked that one. Aside from placing #1 in the best of Panama coffee competition, there's a coffee called Elida Geisha Natural 803, set a record of $803 price per pound, says Clutch Coffee in San Francisco that bought the coffee, and they're selling the award-winning cup of coffee at $75 a cup of coffee. And soon I'll have the Amalia coffee ready from the plantation in Colombia, so let me know if you guys like the coffee. Some analysts claim that by 2040 electric cars could make up 57% of all passenger traffic, up 2% from the previous projection. Electric vehicles and light commercial vehicles, they're saying, are going to be the same percentage in the US, Europe, and China. And also Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi on Wednesday opened up the widest suspension bridge over the Nile. And it's one of the series of the military-led mega projects designed to improve the infrastructure and provide jobs in the country. And last but not least, a new toaster in Japan costs $270, made by, I believe it was Mitsubishi. Yeah, Mitsubishi. It's called the Bread Oven, and they take obviously their toasting seriously in Japan. So that's the news for this week, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions. We'll see you next week.